Haere mai nei mai hoki mai ki tēnei hui o tātou, tēnei te mihi nui kia koutou I te rā nei. Warm welcome to our Climate Action Joint Committee. And to start us, me huatu te raka kia koe matua Roger, kia tuwhira pai ai tā tātou hui. Kia ora.
A tēnā tātou katoa I roto kaupapa tā rā nei, me atu kia koutou. Nā Māki tīmata ngā kore o te wānei. Kia ora tātou. Kino I tātou. A te matua tama wairua tapu āmine. E tō mātua matitarangi, tēnei mātua aupanongo ene nei ki a koe. E te mātua I anga nei mātou ki a koe. Tō mātou hia kia tata mai koe. Kia mātou hei āwhina, hei aritaki. Ia mātou I ngā momo kōrero I mui a mātou tēnei ahiahi. E te matui I ngā wā katoa mahi ai mātou hei korore ai tau I ngō tapu hui hukraiti hoki tō mātou ariki. Āmene.
Amen. Tēnā koe. A very warm welcome. We've got a full whare today. Thank you all for joining us, whether it be on screen, kia ora Tanya and Di, or if you're in the chambers with us today. A special warm welcome to our manuhiri, Jane and Robert, no Parakore and Kurongata Marae, and also our rangatahi, our Climate Action rangatahi rōpū, tēnā koutou, Grace, Hazel and Michaela, and we'll hear from you later on in today's agenda. So although we only have 3 agenda items, we have 2 decision and 1 presentation. These are chunky pieces of mahi that we've said about our vision, our strategy, how we're going to work together going forward. So today's a very important meeting. To get us kicking, do we have any apologies to record? There are none. Tapai, and we have Tim. Kia ora, Tim. You're online with us as well. Kia ora. There are none. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare in today's meeting? Kaore, there are none. Kia ora. Who else have we got? Paul. Oh, Robbie. Kia ora, Robbie. If we look at the minutes from our last meeting held on the 14th of August, if there are no corrections to be made, Councillor Harding to move. Can I have a seconder, please? If you were present, thank you, Anne. All those who agree say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Ka pai. So we move into our decision items, actually. So item 4 is the climate action vision. So Pippa, you have a presentation to put up. Kia ora. I'd also like to invite Dr. Nick Peach, our CE here at the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, to help guide us through some of the items.
Kia ora, Chair, and just ahead of the presentation that Pippa's going to make, really keen to understand from the committee if you endorse the vision and strategy and actions in here. I think to give the committee a sense of momentum would be really valuable to build on that, have that published and put on the record early next year. And then I think some of the other items that flow from here are about future resourcing and thinking about how the technical team that supports this committee does its work behind the scenes. And so maybe we should talk to that as we go through the future items so that you don't end up with a vision and a strategy, but nothing to support it to actually turn into action.
Kia ora, thank you. I'd just like to add and thank everyone for their contribution over the last 2 workshops, the WA shops led by Carl Wixon, and really this was essential for a foundational platform for us on how we work going forward, because we do have differing views, but that's all the richer when the strategy comes together collectively. So tēnā koutou katoa. Hayley, would you like to add anything further?
I think you've covered off most of it. I think one of the things is we all know the level of detail we've gone into as we've pulled this together, and we know that there's further refinement, but this is giving us a sort of a direction to head in, and we'll further refine things as we go forward.
Kia ora. Pippa.
Kia ora, thank you. Kia ora koutou. So you've got these images in the council papers, in the committee papers, but I'll just talk you through it so we can spend some time on it. These This has been developed from that kōrero in the wānanga, in the workshops. So you should be recognising some of the things we talked about, some of those aspirational goals that we talked about. This image is around the vision for this joint committee, that when we can combine our mitigation, so that's reducing our contribution, our regional contribution to climate change, and when we can also be responding to this changing climate, and working together, we can achieve climate resilience. So we're really looking for those actions that have multiple co-benefits in those areas. So looking for climate resilience for the region through inclusive collaboration, considering mitigation and adaptation, and that our work program would reflect that. The vision statement up the top there, Hawke's Bay is a climate resilient region where communities understand and are prepared for change. Together, we all work to reduce our regional contribution to climate change and respond to its impacts. And some more detail about how we as a committee show a leadership role, working collectively with common purpose, sharing costs, maintaining a sense of urgency for action. So we sort of put that together from those discussions. There were time for feedback. The other two slides, the qualities, okay, I think for reading, but you also have these in the document. These were the discussions that you'll recall around the domains that we want to include in our scope of work. So this is the exercise that we did to prioritise domains on feasibility, on impact and desirability, and there are 6 key domains that we think are at the starting point of work that have been prioritised. So looking at biodiversity, and there's a vision there that comes out of the workshop discussions and a strategy, and that at the TAG group, the Technical Advisory Group, would come up with a mitigation plan, a table of actions and an adaptation plan in each of these domains. The second domain there is transport, again with a Vision 2050 and the beginning of a strategy. Primary industry, another important area. That one was selected based on feasibility, impact, and also our current community carbon footprint, the importance of it in our regional footprint. And the last 3 domains, waste, recognising also the vision there, but also recognising some of the work that's happening nationally in mitigation areas of waste, urban housing, and Waimare, fresh water. So hopefully as you read through that table, you will see the types of ideas that you all discussed and the visions that were developed collectively in those workshops with Carl Wixon. The strategy and then the actions to develop would be for TAG to bring to you in subsequent meetings. Did you want me to mention the asterisks? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yes, please.
So there are 3. Well, unfortunately, I see that the version I've given you has too many asterisks.
There's 6 as well.
Sorry, there's obviously a copy and paste error. There should be 3 asterisks on waste, transport, and working in biodiversity. Those tables of actions were developed prior to the workshops. They actually started last year. They were put on hold while the committee was formed and while we worked out our scope and vision. But that's to give you an example of what a table of actions would look like in those domains. So 3 of the 6 tables of actions of mitigation in those domains have been done. We'd consider them draft because they may be a little bit out of date now that we haven't looked at them, but that's to show you the type of work, and if you support that, we would the TAG group would continue with that kind of work. I wanted to get those to you because they've been sitting there for a few months now. So I think that's it for me on those vision and strategy, if that's...
Yeah, ka pai, Anne.
Kia ora, thank you,
Kia ora.
Chair. Thank you, Papa. I'm definitely going where you're leading. That sounds good to me. But one thing that came to mind when I read through this is, where is central government in all of this, considering their policy changes that are about to make with oil and gas, with water, with significant natural areas, etc. So how do we incorporate them in either as a partner or somebody to inform what we're doing? Because otherwise we're going to make decisions that we may not be able to implement.
Yes. Would there be a good time to show the what the summary that's been done of the incoming coalition, like what might affect us as the joint, there is this.
Yeah, if we just have questions
division.
around this, and we'll get to that though, Anne, we can answer that
Well,
on next
that's
slides.
my question, is how do we get central government into this vision?
Coming
Yeah.
into that.
Nick, would you like to add to that?
Just through you, Chair, or the co-chairs, maybe suggest that as part of the final document, as well as the actions and visions for the region, there's a picture of our critical partnerships, and our critical partnerships are both internal, mana whenua and councils and industry, but equally out to government. So I think it would be good to kind of acknowledge that up front in the vision that we have that role.
I'll go Zan and then Tanya, then Alex. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, through you, just want to congratulate the staff and Carl Whitson and all of us actually for getting to this point quite quickly. The 2 workshops were excellent, and this is distills as well, and it's be great to get this signed off before the end of the year and feel like we've actually, found some areas of agreement. The greatest strength of this is some focus. I'm really happy with the 6 focus areas. I'm very happy that our top 2 emitters are in there as transport and agriculture. And I do want to say that there's no presumption of what solutions are in there. So there's only areas to focus on what is possible, reasonable to do, and areas that we will work with the community to see what is possible. So I don't think anyone should perceive a threat in any of that. I do want to encourage us to leave some flexibility within our strategy to deal with a couple of things. One is we've already talked about a little bit where government policy goes, which is somewhat uncertain, but also some of this can be very much a tactical response. So just to recognise that there might be opportunities that come along that fall outside of that, and we shouldn't disregard them just because they happen not to be in that top. We have to pull every lever available. So I just wanted to leave that thought. I just wanted to say on the diagram, Te Hurunga Ahurangi, my limitations when I wasn't sure whether that was the changing climate or climate change, and I'm not sure whether that matters or not. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I would like whatever graphics we come up with to be bilingual, please. And at the moment, there's some areas that we could do a little bit better in that. In the fine print, it talks about climate resilient development. I think Pippa will understand how loaded that statement is, and that's probably unnecessary to talk about that. So we could just talk about climate resilience. I think that's enough on that. There's a lot of talk about incentives. I don't believe any local government is in a position to be leading around an incentive-based approach to this. We simply don't have the finances. Incentives could be the way we structure our policy, for sure, but just we don't want to be leading with the idea that this is we're bringing money to the table and that's the only way to get things done. Education, demonstration are very, very powerful. And thank you very much for the opportunity to
Thank you,
comment.
Kia ora. Very wise words. Thank you, Zan. So what I took out of that is just watching around how we use words, especially incentives, and this idea about bilingualism, which is a very good point. So we'll just let it stew within us, and when we get to the resolution at the end, we can start adding or changing things there. Kapua. Tanya, kia ora.
Kia ora. Through you, Madam Chair, just jumping to water, there's a statement, you can drink water and eat kai from our rivers, which is safe to swim in. And I just felt that was, are the water from the rivers safe to drink? I thought there were 2 standards, drinkable water in our rivers versus swimmable waters in our rivers. I would love us to be able to drink water from our rivers. I'm not sure this is what this is saying, so it's just, to me, it's a wordsmithing. Following on from that, is there a need for us to finalise this document today, or is it a chance for us to give some feedback or have the recommendations tweaked such that we approve it in principle with the wordsmithing to come back? And then jumping through to primary industry, and picking up on Zan's point about maybe not too prescriptive or too limiting. Agriculture, hort, viticulture and forestry take place under biodiversity management plans and land use regulations. Once again, I think that's about the wordsmithing, because we also have freshwater management plans. We also have farm environmental management plans. I think there might be wording that can be all-encompassing, that it's not so specific as a biodiversity management plan. But as I read this, I thought, wow, this really has captured this whole plan, this whole vision and strategy really has captured much of the discussions that we've had in the vision of the collective. So also, well done.
Kia ora, thank you, Tanya. Alex?
I do an open question, which we can deal with at the end, about next steps, about how we're going to flesh out the actions around the rest of these things, because adaptation actions actually on a number of these are really, really important, and we haven't really even delved into that. And so that's going to be important. My question originally was similar to Anne's about partners, because the document's quite obtuse about the existing relationships and organisations that are already there. So missing language about biodiversity, Hawke's Bay, missing language about risk reduction and research from Hawke's Bay Civil Defence Group, from the regional water security strategy, from all sorts of things that have kind of already got a place, where actually as the team action, we've got to kind of name them to give them a place, otherwise it looks like it's just us doing this, and it's not. Catchment groups, so Central Hawke's Bay has got a large number of very active catchment groups who are leading from the front, and so it would be really great to make sure that there's a space of how we interact, name those as places we go to. And we use the word industry, which is quite a big word, and I actually think we can probably be a bit more specific about that. And I think all of that will help us just focus a bit more, and when we get those actions, be really clear about the next steps. So that was the part, the relationships part and connections. And I think the piece that's understated here is probably in the urban environment density piece, where the risk management and planning is really, really important around how are we designing urban form based on risk profiles, and how are we building those. And there's a really significant crossover with Civil Defence Group work in this, and I just think we need to think carefully about how we're informing for all of that. So I'm going to be really honest, from a Central Hawke's Bay perspective, we don't have this capability to do all of that risk mapping ourselves, and so that's a really big reason why we come to the table at the regional level to get that scale, to get that work done. So that's something we're particularly interested in, and I think it could just be a little bit stronger about that risk planning and science.
Great points. So just on what you've said, Pippa, is there already work done around a relationship framework with all those groups that Alex mentioned, plus all the ones that there are?
So other than the table that's in the paper about how we might engage with those three, Manawatu communities and industry, which I take your point is a little bit vague, could be more specific. There was some work done by the Coastal Hazards Joint Committee about the different adaptation, how they all piece together. So I thought of that immediately. Perhaps we need to take that piece of work and further develop it, looking at our role in that adaptation risk management space, and that could definitely be something that we bring back to you. so we get an idea of the different partners and the work going on by other committees where we fit in.
That would be really helpful. That joint committee was one that I meant to say and I forgot, so thank you for raising that one.
Yeah, so that piece of work would be really useful to bring back, and I know this is a phased approach. Now, we've got our themes and priority areas, which is fantastic, but now it's filling it in with where the relationships, how do we work across the region collaboratively? Nick, would you like to add any further?
Chair, I think what Mayor Alex has just spoken to kind of points to me to there's a gap here around senior enough staff inside the collective councils and working with mana whenua, coming together around climate change to support the work of the TAG. So the TAG are doing excellent work as technical experts around climate change, but we know climate change goes across everything that we are all doing, and it's really once you hit kind of senior managers and GMs inside organisations like councils, you get that sense of integration. So if the committee's comfortable, I'd be quite keen to do some work to see what we could do to have that senior staff support to the TAG, and that might be like a senior officers steering group, something like that, that helps that integration across these multiple programs come together, because I think without it, we'll miss the very things that Mayor Alex was talking about. And maybe we could come back to your next committee with a recommendation. I'll chat to the CEs about it as well.
That would be great.
I agree with you about that senior level of officials that help create that integration, so I would absolutely support that approach.
Aye. Any other comments? Kia ora, Michelle.
I just on the cultural values there, I noticed rangatiratanga is missing, and I'm sure I would have mentioned it. You know, in line with the principle Article 2 of the Te Tiriti. Yeah, that only covers a few of the values or the principles that we will be aspiring to. But most definitely that and participation, partnership, protection. Kia ora.
Kia ora. I think it's a good point to have included, because I do remember us speaking about it in the workshop,
I would have written
rangatiratanga.
it. I know I would have written it, and just for a thing, so kaitiakitanga is in RMA and it's used in that way, but from a learned friend of mine, we aren't a kaitiaki, we're not taniwha. And we are talking about rangatiratanga exerting our rights as tangata whenua. So just need to get that.
Kia ora, Michelle. And I think that's with the wordsmithing that everyone's included here needs to be incorporated.
And I think we should aspire to having waters, rivers that we can drink from, and, you know, not being afraid of the kai that, when we mahinga kai, not being afraid of what we're eating, and we should be able to swim in. You know, that is the highest level. We should aspire to that, not try and look at well, we'll be here. It will be just okay. We better not jump in the river, and you better not drink that water because you're going to get sick. That's not good enough. So kia ora.
Kia ora, Michelle. Roger, kia ora.
Kia ora. Yeah, and overall a very good report and summarising and support much of the commentary that's been made to improve it and fine tune it. Just one point I want to bring in, it's raised because of what you've got under the urban housing, and start off with the high density urban situation, and that it creates a situation. And then there's also talk about primary industry. So I want to put a plug in for the rural village, because we tend to get mixed. I live in one, and we tend to get missed out. So it's either the middle of Hastings or Napier, or it's the farmer who has an agribusiness somewhere. But there's a lot of us who live in village, in South Hawke's Bay, I think about 6 or 7 rural villages, and our challenges are slightly different to both the farmer and the urban centre.
Yes.
And we tend to get missed out in all the initiatives and programming that comes, because it's aimed at one of those two areas. So I just want to put that on the table, that the rural village throughout Hawke's Bay is quite a substantial part of the population.
Matua, does that look like with the urban housing domain that there needs to be the rural in there as well, urban, rural domain,
Well,
housing
when it
domain?
talk, I mean, well, first of all, urban, I think in our provincial definition, to me, that would include places like Waipokoro, Wairoa, Waipawa, as opposed to the village and the numerous villages and the situation and climate change and effect on the various villages. Yeah.
Any other pātai or comments with the draft vision and strategy? Yeah. Hayley, kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. I think this is brilliant, and I think we're sort of closing in on where we're going. I had a chat with Carl after our second workshop, and I said to him, I was like, this feels like we're kind of charting a new path, and committees have been set up thousands, if not millions of times before. How can this be so tricky to know where we're going? And he reminded me, like, the complexity of the issues that we're facing with climate change and the number of different organisations and the number of key stakeholders that all have to come together. And so I think this is, it kind of narrows us in, but we haven't really landed on exactly where we're going, but I think that's right for where we're at. And just sort of to Michelle's point around mana whenua and where that fits into it. One of our workshops, or the second workshop, we were hoping to have a kōrero around ideal like relationships between the councils, the mana whenua, and also the community. And I think we most definitely need to hold that space open and have time to work out what that relationship could and should look like. And it's not for councils to say what that could be. So really keen to hold that space and to hear from, yeah.
Kia ora, Hayley. Tim?
Yeah, I just sort of agree with Tanya on the comment around agriculture and the number of consents and policies we have in place to run that. So I think, we need to tidy that up. But I'm just wondering, have we gone deep enough into this? And Alex mentioned it around all the other groups that are working on things like flooding, also around sea inundation and even irrigation to make sure we can have food produced as it warms up, and also the effect of what's going to happen if we have suddenly get thousands of people turn up in New Zealand because the islands have been flooded. Is this the place we should be putting that stuff in this document, or is that too early in the conversation yet? To sort of later on in this conversation, around this document?
I think it's a really good question, Tim, and I think it will evolve and it will need to evolve to how our environment changes. But I think for now we're going to endorse today principally with the wordsmithing so that it gives our tag group some teeth to get into, particularly around the emissions reporting, and we'll hear about it with the funding paper next, and also the risk management that deals with both mitigation and adaptation. So that's a really good question, and I think we need to keep that in our mind as we, as a committee, develop.
Because I'm just a bit concerned as this document goes out to the community, and I speak on behalf of landowners here, that they'll look at this and go, just more regulations for nothing gained. So I'm just a bit concerned that it won't be well accepted if it goes out to the public as it stands now.
I'm not sure exactly where you're seeing regulation everywhere. It's a strategy and a vision.
It's the comment around primary production. It talks about more. I might have been just a bit more stuff, because as Alex pointed out, there's things about freshwater regulations. My farm's under consent and all those sorts of things. So just wondering, I may have read it later on and what the regional council are wanting to do, but I might have got that slightly wrong.
think we're trying to keep this as open and flexible as possible, and it's more around understanding and awareness first on those focus areas, and then how we build in that detail is really still to come. Thank you, Tanya.
I think to support Tim's concern that this document that talks about primary industry will take place under biodiversity management plans and land use regulations, maybe that's where the worry is, and there can be we know what we're trying to achieve. And if this could be worded in a way that referred to best practice or with climate resilience and just different words, because the intent is certainly that we want our primary industries to be aiming for the best they can be, just like we want industry, just like we want urban design. Once again, to me, it comes back to the wording.
Yeah. Best practice. Yep.
And it is a wording for a future state. The column is about vision for 2050. So I think that's probably where we've got a little bit of a misalignment.
Yeah.
The language
Good
kind of
suggestions.
feels current state rather than future state.
Yeah. Anne?
Kia ora. Thanks, anyway. Do we call it a living document? Because we're likely to adapt and change it all the way through, actually.
I think we should treat it as a living document. Absolutely.
As such.
Zane?
Sure, Chair. Well, I am happy to move the recommendations. And I think to pick up on Anne's point, if we call it a living document, that probably answers the question that I want to table in moving it, just a clarity about what the next steps are. And I certainly support the idea of getting something, which is as a draft, a living document out to the public. And so I think we've probably given enough guidance to get to that step. I think we can always come back to it. The other point I just want to make is that we have tables of actions for 3 of the 6 domains. An obvious next step is to look at those other domains that we haven't gone through a process of looking at potential actions. And I think whilst, the process has been for the existing domains has been tag driven, I'd like to think that whilst it's a combination of tag and broader and industry input, so that's primary sector, that's I don't know, because we certainly haven't done that exercise for the primary sector. So this is a great opportunity to put a frame around that for next year. And I have been having conversations in the primary sector, and I think we're starting to see some, potential pathways to have that in ways that the community can accept. So I'm happy to move.
Great. And so what we are moving is recommendations 1, 2 and 3, but 3 based on, in principle, with accuracy of wording that we've all discussed here. We've all had inclusion. So that will be incorporated into that, considering this is a living document. Ka pai? Anne?
Happy to second.
Happy to second?
Question?
Yes, question, Tanya?
2 questions. One, can we have the final document sent out via email? So if there is a moment, that we can bounce it back. The second one, does that include the 3 table of mitigations for biodiversity, transport and waste?
Do you mean included as an appendix of the
I'm
strategy?
just trying to understand, are they what we're also confirming, or are they going to be they're still held as draft?
Pippa, this was just for information.
Yeah, it really was for information. I think it would be nice to separate the vision and strategy and have that sort of endorsed in principle like what you're discussing, and then the tables of action we're showing to as an example. We would develop the other areas with your support and come to you with a more finalised version, an updated version for some of them that have changed based on the central government legislation.
Thank you, I support that. I appreciate that there is examples.
Kia ora, thank you. Anything else from the wall or on Zoom? Ka pai? Hayley?
Just a comment around those. I think one of the ideas of including them today was about showing a bit of a format. So our last workshop, we talked about what sort of format we want our strategy to take. Do we want it to be a glossy big document, or do we want to cut right to the thick of it? And so this is saying this would be the meats of our document, and it's just a really short table, sort of in that format, but the content of which we still need to work on.
Aye. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Kia ora tātou. So now we get to the implementation and how we're going to achieve this mahi going forward. So who would like to present our funding paper? Looks like you're back up there. Nick can join in when he arrives back.
Okay. So the paper that we've put to you proposes for the first time that we contribute ongoing funding over the next 3 years to the work of this committee, to include the things we've talked about there in mitigation and adaptation. If you look at the
Some support.
Yep.
If you look there at the table of the indicative budget that we've put to you, it really is a bare bones budget. We have not added in extra wish lists. It's not a Christmas wish list by any means. This is what we drilled it down to really being the bare minimum that we thought we could do, both in tasks and amounts. The major items there are this risk assessment for which we know we need data. So at our first meeting in May, you had Dr. Tom Logan from Risk Explorer Urban Intelligence present to you the tool that had been put together, and that work identified some gaps in our knowledge, gaps in our data, both at different district levels or hazard levels. So, for example, wildfire, we don't have a lot of data about that, those sorts of things, as spatial-based wildfire data. So we know kind of what we're missing. To go to the next steps and to complete that data costs, because that's consultancy cost, that's technical input that we need. So that's the big first line there, and the subscription to a platform to hold all of that information. The third line is the measuring of our community carbon footprint. So you'll recall the community carbon footprint that was delivered in 2022. We did, for the first time, we measured Hawke's Bay regional emissions, and those are the data that get recited quite a lot. That's how we identify our biggest contributing sectors, and we know for our districts and cities that ideally we would do that work every 3 years to get an update to see how we're tracking against targets, against goals, to see what impact we're having. We do have staff now within the Regional Council who can do an informal update of it on a yearly basis, but we need the external auditing or the external input, some of the data you purchase. So that's the next big ticket item, and then the other tickets are really around communication, engagement, events, some community funding, which we're putting in there, but we would bring a paper to you to propose what that would look like at your next meeting. Based on a model, a different ratio of contributions based on size of councils, and yes, and you know it's scalable up, down. If there is more work, if we get into that risk assessment and find that there really is more work, it doesn't preclude that we wouldn't come back to you and say this is going to cost more to get that, but also it's it would be on an actual expenditure basis. So we'll, at the end of the year, we'll be working out how much was spent, and we'll be requesting that from the partner councils.
Thank you, Pippa. We've got Taylor, and we've got Heather. It's been a week, I've been away. Here to join us on behalf of Hastings District and Napier City as well, as part of our TAG whānau there. Did you want to add any more, the two of you, because you've helped produce this paper?
I do think the only thing that's worth noting is that climate change risk assessment costing $300,000 was a quote from 2019, is that correct? 22? Sorry, 22, which means that it will probably be more than that now, just with inflation and everything. So I guess it's to understand that this is a best guess while also trying to recognise the financial positions of all of the councils in the wake of Cyclone Gabrielle, but that is probably one of the key pieces of work, and that from a regional perspective, all of the participants will benefit from that piece of work being done, because that really enables us to look at adaptation planning. So I guess that's.
And I think just adding to that, it would be helpful. I know that at NCC there's often pieces of work that would fall within that risk assessment that are happening separately. So it's probably, that's probably a conversation for each council to have about sort of the cost benefit of doing it at this regional level versus doing lots of discrete little pieces of work. And feeding that back, I guess.
Thanks, team. Nick, did you have anything further to add?
Just through you, Chair, I think two things. I think this also goes back to the earlier conversation in the previous item about having a GM level steering group to help that integration across various pieces of work that are going on inside councils. The other comment I'd make, I think, for this committee to actually make progress on climate change is at some stage going to require a financial contribution to occur, and appreciate that it's very tough times post-cyclone for communities and councils. But I think important that this committee, through you, if members endorse it, send a signal that if work is going to be done and progress is going to be made by the committee at some stage, it's going to cost some financial resource to do it. So the committee doesn't just end up talking about things and actually get some actions done.
Precisely. Thank you, Nick. Zan.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, the nervousness I have about this budget is all with the hazard analysis and the data, and I feel that this is a potential black hole that you could just keep on pouring money in to try and get better and better data with diminishing returns. And so where I land on this is that it's probably, from my point of view, whilst I can see that ultimately it's very good to have, it's probably the least of my priorities, and the thing that I think could benefit most from integration that we've talked about and some senior input to ensure that in terms of prioritising and controlling the spend, there's some agreement at a regional level about which data is most important. So I think this could really benefit this particular project from really good steerage from a senior group across the region to, one, to control the expenditure, and two, in terms of the total quantum, because it could just go on forever. And two, to just make sure that it's focused on the most important data at any given time, so that, because this will be an iterative thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Zan. So I'll try and turn that into a question for you, Nick. Priorities in the risk assessment and the cost of it, how can you see that being managed at that GM level based on what's asked for in this budget?
I think through you, Chair, there are probably two aspects to that. One is, what are we already doing across mana whenua and councils that contribute to understanding risk? And in my head, you can almost substitute the word risk for vulnerability. So where are we vulnerable across the region to the impacts of climate change? And then how do we deal with those vulnerabilities? And I'm just checking the tag is not not going in a different direction to the tag. And often what those vulnerability assessments reveal is that the people and places that are the least able to deal with the impacts of climate change are the most affected. And we only have to look at some of the communities that have been suffered through the cyclone to see where that's the case. So I think there's a job to do to see what are we already doing, and to have a look at the risk assessment in terms of vulnerability. And I think given that there's potentially a significant financial contribution, have that GM level steering group, and I'd suggest carry on as you wish with the resolutions in here, but before any work's actually commissioned, that scope is really nailed down and comes back to this committee for its approval. I think the message the committee you're sending now is to your member councils as that there's a financial contribution being requested here. Can you please consider it through your LTP before anything goes ahead? Scope needs to be dealt with and managed, and make sure the scope meets the requirements of Mana Whenua and the councils.
Good answer. Alex?
So I've got two questions. The first one is, could we get a scope for that risk assessment data to be defined between the tag and the civil defence tag? Because the CDM group will also be doing risk assessments and research in the coming 12 months as well. Let's nail down a scope with them so we're not double dipping. So is that possible? And my second question is, how can we get our heads around these percentage contributions? Because it's turning into dollars per head of population in Central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa, and it's cents per head of population across Hastings and Napier. I don't think it's necessarily something worth debating, disputing at this table, but it doesn't, the sense check for me is not quite right.
Good questions. So on that, Pippa, how involved is the civil defence tag in your tag group? Is there good alignment there to address Alex's concern about double dipping?
Yeah, I think we can certainly address that. We have Adam Childs who sits on our tag group, so he would be our link to that, the CDM group. But, and we also need to link in with the Hawke's Bay Hazards portal, which has some of that data on it. So yes, we can take that on board and come back on that. Did you want to add?
Yeah, just that the idea with that urban intelligence, like, what is it called?
Resilience Explorer for
Explorer, yeah, is that all of the data from all of the different councils and CDM goes into there, so then it gives us an idea of where our gaps are and it reduces the likelihood that we'll be doing the same thing again.
And that also, like, while this data is being collected, and it can go into that, so we have a spatial view. If we didn't have Resilience Explorer as a tool, we would still need to understand the risk and hazards across our communities, because that's how we can do adaptation planning to protect our communities, particularly those that are the most vulnerable. And without doing that piece of work, we don't have a clear, like, metrics-based way to assess who's the greatest risk, and, you know, what are those different factors that are contributing to that. So I think that the Risk Explorer just gives us a really easy way to identify what's missing, rather than that being like the goal is just to get data into there. It's to actually understand what it is that we're responding to.
Nick, would you like to address the percentage per heads without getting into dollars and cents, like Alex has said? Is it today's an in principle around contribution and then asking the GMs at that level to really work out the dollars and cents for the work?
Through you, Chair, I'd suggest that if you kept Resolution 3 just purely to agrees that the Chair and Deputy Chair write to partner councils, and that we don't necessarily use the funding split that's in the table below, but we'll come back by email with some thoughts on what that might look like as an actual number. Would that work?
Thank you. Look, I'm absolutely happy to support a resolution that says we need contribution across the councils. Absolutely happy to front that. I'm just trying to make sure that what we're presenting is something that's rational, and this is not rational as far as I can tell. So it would be good to get some more specific advice before we take it to the councils.
So perhaps we could take an action on the back of that, Chair, that talk to my fellow CEs across the councils as to what that might look like.
Yep,
Thank you.
Tanya?
When I read this paper, the first thing I thought, and it's been touched on before, is how closely we're working with CDM and also with the Regional Coastal Hazards team, because there's so many interwoven risks. And if that's going to be done, I appreciate the quantum of investment we need will still remain the same, but we're not going to duplicate work or have different contractors doing similar things. The other one I just wasn't comfortable with, without further explanation, is Us putting aside $30,000 a year for community grants for climate action and adaptation. I think until we have done this work ourselves, and we know where we're going ourselves, that's where our focus should be. We should remain as a regional entity looking at this, really focused on what can we achieve. And once we've got our strategies and our actions locked down, out of that may come the need for funding community groups. Just feel we're front-ending it wrong by putting $90,000 over the first 3 years into community grants. I would rather the $90,000 was spent on us achieving more. Sorry, through you, Madam Chair.
It's okay, it's a thought, so Zan?
Just a slight counter to my colleague. Given that this is for LTP processes, I would be concerned if we weren't making a provision inside 3 years. So my sort of counter suggestion would be perhaps if we have to leave that out of the first year, but have it in the second year and then figure out what that looks like down the track. But I think I think we'll all agree that the power of, demonstration and individuals taking action that creates a cascading effect is really important in this space. And so I certainly on board with the idea of that being a valuable thing for the region to do. How we do it, different question, but if through this, I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Kia ora, Roger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to enter into this conversation, because I did actually make a note of it, I support Tanya's position on the grounds that this is not a lot of money. So you spread this across the whole province, you're looking at $1,000 or $2,000 grants across the whole region. And in some ways that could do more damage than good. Because anyone in a planting program knows you can blow $5,000 just without even thinking. So some kind of false hope when they see this, there's community grants, because that's what the public will see, community grants, immediately thinking there's a whole lot of money in this to do some community project, only to find that it takes you 6 months to write an application, and then if you're lucky, you're going to get $1,500 out of it. So I think it's either substantial or it has to be reformed another way. I've heard that, I realise this is a council decision and there's not a lot of money out there. So I'm wondering what it's doing there under the guise of it's got to be community grant, where each individual council has already got programs, and maybe that's the issues that the partner councils put aside money in their own budgets for climate change initiative, as opposed to bring it into this arena here.
Kia ora, thank you for your thoughts. Any other thoughts on? Yes, Pippa? Sorry, is that to answer, to help guide that?
Yeah, I
question?
can, because I understand it's difficult to, see a budget table, the line in a budget table, and you have no context to that line, and we haven't brought that proposal to you. The context for it is it works quite successfully in other regions to have a grant. Bay of Plenty Regional Council has been running for many years, and it doesn't fund planting. Those kind of initiatives are funded through another community grant that we have in Hawke's Bay Biodiversity Support. These are things like, we hear the term from Ministry for Environment, the managed retreat has now been changed to community-led retreat, that's the term. Well, we realise that you can't have community-led retreat unless we enable and we really support communities. So the focus of it would be more things like that, where in Bay of Plenty they've got like a surf lifesaving group, bringing all the neighbourhood together to look at their adaptation plan and their future plans, marae groups doing that sort of thing. So it's more around that adaptation and really trying to give them some money to run workshops and hui, that sort of thing. But I understand, a line in a table doesn't give you much context for that. And
Thank you for sharing that understanding.
Based on another model used.
Alex?
Yeah, so I think seed funding into community action is quite powerful. But I think also across the region, there's a number of existing funds that are doing some of this kind of stuff, like you mentioned Biodiversity Hawke's Bay. My council's got environmental education grants, which are directed to schools and young people. There's kind of other things going on. So I would support keeping this line in the budget there, but recognising there's a piece of work to actually scope out what it is that would actually have impact. Because, you know, it's, there's lots of players in this mix as well.
Absolutely. I would agree. Look at what's missing and what's not supported, but in the adaptation space is really critical. Yeah. Nick?
And through you, Chair, I think if we can reduce any of the administrative costs that sit behind any of these things by combining with existing mechanisms, let's look at how we combine with existing mechanisms so people don't get a whole new set of forms, a whole new set of people looking at them for what, as Dr. Martha pointed out, is a relatively small amount of money. So it feels like another one where perhaps there's some scope to come back with and some alignment with other programs around the region.
Kia ora, thank you. Any further comments to this item? Tanya?
I'm happy to support the fund staying in, but I would like that piece of work done.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think you've heard our direction in terms of that fund and to come back to scope that out. Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments for this item, we have on page 22 the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 with the understanding that that table isn't exact and there's some work to do at the GM level for long-term planning proposals with details that make sense across the GMs. Kapai? That out. Yeah, come on. You'd like to move, Alex?
Yes, but with that, I'd like to, can I speak when I,
Yes, of
when
course.
I'll move, yeah.
Yep, and seconder?
I second only if the word draft is added to the in front of the table. Very simple insertion of a word.
Yes.
Are you happy with that, Alex?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Alex?
Thank you. Look, I think it's really important that we put our money where our mouths are, and it's a relatively small amount, but we've got to get going. And in fact, my challenge back to the TAG and the executive group about how to get the split right is the current number in the table says effectively $2 per head of population in Central Hawke's Bay District. I would put the word all back to the group that says actually how do we make that $2 per head of population across the whole region, and then it would be equitable. So I'm not looking for our amount to go down, I'm actually looking for the contribution to be more equitable and from everybody in the region to that extent. And are really pleased to see that we can support this and to work alongside the risk measurement work that already happens across a number of portals across the council framework to simplify this, and the portal sounds like a way that we can do that, and we've got to get into it.
Kia ora, thank you, Alex. Tanya?
I support my learned colleague, thank you.
Any
Colleague
other
Sip.
speakers? There are no other speakers. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you all. Kia ora, team. We now have our manuhiri. Would you like to come up? Our rangatahi group. So we have a presentation from the Youth Action Climate Forum. You had a forum in October? Aye. Great. Want me to click through for you girls, or do you want to do it? Do you want me to click it through? Presentation? Okay. Yes. Please come at the front. Oh, you're going to want to stand. Okay, to play, yeah. It's up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. Hinirangi, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll just say kia ora koutou. Really awesome to have our rangatahi or representatives from our Rangatahi Environment Committee here at Regional Council. So we've got Michaela, Hazel and Grace representing from Napier Girls High School, Taikura Rudolph Steiner and Karame High School. So a good representation of our secondary school students, and they've got a really awesome presentation for us today. So over to you girls when you're ready.
Kia ora koutou, ko Michaela Jellyman toku ingoa. Thank you for having us here this afternoon to korero with you about the ideas we generated at the Youth Climate Action Forum held earlier this year. We're excited to be here. We're all nervous, but really keen to represent our ideas. So our hope is to convey a strong message from a youth perspective, encompassing a vision for the future of Hawke's Bay's climate action initiatives, which we hope to see come to fruition in our region. As I have mentioned, my name is Michaela Jellyman from Napier Girls High School, where we have been involved in many climate action events throughout the year, such as helping clean up Estdale after the cyclone, investing in rat trapping and pest removal, and attending events such as beach cleanups and tree plantings. I've also personally been involved in things such as the School Strikes for Climate and being interviewed by a Napier Girls Old Girl about climate anxiety and what we can do about it.
Kia ora koutou, ko Grace Tuku Ingoa. I've just finished year 13 at Karamu High School. We've been working towards making our school community more sustainable through incorporating gardens and composting systems into our curriculum, as well as an annual climate week where we have a range of events and workshops for both our school community and wider friends and whānau.
Kia ora koutou, ko Hazel toku ingoa, ko Hazel Hatcher toku ingoa. I am a 2023 graduate of Taikura Rostaina. During my time at school, I've been part of waste and power sustainability projects. I'm also part of the Rangatahi Environmental Committee, where I too have worked for change on a wider platform through beach cleanups and climate strikes. I hope to carry on with this work next year when I travel down to Wellington for university. So, who are we? We are part of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Rangatahi Environmental Committee. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council Rangatahi Environment Committee gives young people the opportunity to speak out on environmental issues they feel passionate about, to get actively involved in local environmental events, demonstrate commitment to environmental protection, and help tell others about the importance of the environment. Our committee is made up of young people from Hawke's Bay secondary schools, and our purpose is to support students in our schools to take action to improve climate action, as well as encourage young people to have a voice on relevant environmental issues. This year, the committee have helped organise and participated in beach cleanups, a sustainable coastline litter survey at Waitangi Regional Park, and the Youth Climate Action Forum event held at Karamu High School during the Term 3 holidays. Some of our schools also took part in the Hawke's Bay Secondary School Environment Challenge, which supports students in initiating environmental action in their schools. Grace will now korero with you all about the Youth Climate Action Forum.
Thanks, Hazel. So the Youth Climate Action Forum centred around bringing rangatahi together and hearing their voice on climate action initiatives which are important to us. Through better understanding climate change and workshopping actions to combat it, our hope is to develop a youth perspective that will help the Hawke's Bay community thrive. So Hawke's Bay Regional Council Rangatahi Environment Committee, with the support of Hirangi Price and Sarah Shaw, held the Youth Climate Action Forum at Karamu High School earlier this year. At the forum, young people took to the stage and shared their ideas about how to build a better and brighter future for Hawke's Bay. Secondary school students from Karamu High, Taradale High, Napier Girls, Taikura Rudolph Steiner, Woodford, Hastings Girls and Havelock North High came together to learn about, discuss and workshop visions and action plans around topics that are meaningful to them, such as sustainable transport, waste minimisation and protecting our waterways. To prepare for creating our action plans, we first listened to a series of guest speakers from Hawke's Bay Regional Council, including Te Rangiho Gilbert, Senior Advisor of Māori Partnerships, Narifa Abraham Bennett, Senior Client Scientist, and Pippa McKelvey Cibolo, Climate Action Ambassador. Environmental activist and Kapiti Coast Councillor Sophie Hanford also sent through a video to inspire us about climate action initiatives and encourage discussions. Following our speakers, students broke into workshops, each with the support of local experts to define their visions and create presentations to deliver to a panel of judges and counsellors later that day. Councillors Zan Harding, Sophie Sears and Jock McIntosh, as well as Michelle Kang from Sustainable Hawke's Bay, made up the panel, giving us feedback and advice as well as possible next steps. As you hear about soon, we had 3 main group themes: improving transport, sustainable mindsets, and protecting our waterways. I now invite Michaela to korero with you about how we think we could improve sustainable transport around the Hawke's Bay community.
Thank you, Grace. One of the actions we spoke about at the Youth Climate Action Forum was our public transport system in Hawke's Bay. Our group discussed how public transport is an amazing way to create an environmentally sustainable method of travel, and how we would love to see this system improved to be more accessible, reliable, and convenient in order to increase the amount of people taking the bus around Hawke's Bay. Some of the barriers we discussed were that many people don't want to take the bus because of its inconvenience. When comparing our bus system to a city like Wellington, which has many people using the bus system and the trains on a daily basis, I can see one main difference. In Wellington, the buses will come and go about every 20 to 30 minutes, and this decreases to 10 minutes during peak hours. Whereas in Hawke's Bay, the buses only come and go about every 40 minutes to an hour, and this is even worse during weekends, which I would argue is when we need the buses to be most frequent. This timetable being so inconvenient and so not frequent makes it very difficult for people to access and rely on the bus system as their main source of transport. Another reason why many people don't want to take public transport is because of the deep stigma we have created surrounding public transport and buses and things like that. When people look at buses, they think that it's dirty and unsafe and are therefore less likely to want to take these systems to work or school. To fight these barriers, we need to invest in more frequent and reliable bus times and routes. This can be done by analysing when most people take buses to see when we need to where we might need to increase frequency, and conducting surveys to see what people want and need in Hawke's Bay, and just in general investing more time and money into the buses. However, I understand that in order to be able to do this, we need to make sure that there's actually demand for public transport. And to do that, we need to reduce the stigma around public transport. Creating advertisements which utilise humour and positivity, using our local celebrities such as the All Blacks to show that it's cool and fun to use the bus. We could also invest and promote initiatives such as the Wednesday Challenge, which are great methods to get more people using the bus system through incentives, and could also be a way to involve local businesses by having them donate prizes in exchange for free advertisement. The Wednesday Challenge, which I mentioned before, encourages people to take public transport to work or school by having them log points and getting prizes for the people who log the most points every Wednesday. They also have an option to involve schools, which could be an amazing way to encourage our youth to be involved in sustainable transport. Overall, we believe that if we can invest in a better bus system and cool new advertisements and initiatives, then we could be able to increase the amounts of people who use public transport and therefore reduce the amount of vehicles on our roads. Hazel will now speak about sustainable mindsets around waste and recycling.
Thank you, Michaela. During the climate forum in the Term 3 holidays, which we mentioned before, I was part of the team brainstorming ideas around waste. As we brainstormed what we thought sustainability looked like, we found similar themes were emerging in relation to waste in schools. These were harmony, skill, belonging, and equality, to name a few, which we could all link to one idea: community. For sustainable waste management to be possible, there has to be a strong community that supports this kaupapa. For change to happen, we need a mindset change, and for that to happen, the best way is to start with our tamariki and rangatahi. However, there are barriers. that are not allowing this vision. These barriers are that our waste system is not integrated into our school curriculum, and any waste project or sustainable waste system in schools are not being funded. What schools need is for waste management to be linked to the curriculum, and we need funding to help manage waste in our schools. The other aspect to this is action-based learning. Connecting with our community is powerful, and learning from others in our own backyard about what works and what doesn't is the best learning you can get. Help us to connect with the community by being accessible and supporting those who try and achieve that. When I learnt about climate change, which may have been different to the mainstream curriculums, so much of the curriculum was based around why it was happening. Occasionally, we got stories of people making a difference, but they were adults with their own companies and money. We need ways for students during these lessons to learn to make change by actually going out into the community and into our own backyard. Not sitting in a class watching Netflix series or YouTube videos of some farmer in America. I would rather hear from someone in my community or local area than from someone on the other side of the world. This change in our curriculum, funding support so our schools can recycle, because we do want to do that, and having access to action-based learning in our community will be more possible if we're supported from council. This is how we hope to build a community with a sustainable mindset. Now back to Grace about our ideas. To speak about our ideas, we have put about protecting our waterways.
Water is more than just a resource. It's part of our identity. In Hawke's Bay, our rivers and lakes carry the stories of those who have been here before us and shape us into the people we are today. In the future, we envision waterways that not only sustain our communities, but also serve as hubs for connection, recreation, and environmental sustainability. Following the cyclone, there's been heaps of disruptions and changes to our local awa, creating new challenges and issues, but it also encourages collaboration and community involvement into getting them back into the state they were or making them even better. Some barriers which stop us making the most of our waterways include a negative or uninterested mindset, like Michaela talked about with the buses, where people aren't just overly interested in visiting our local streams and rivers. Another is a lack of widely known or enforced regulations, especially with dumping and pollution runoff. And there's also the issue of limited accessibility to waterways, even pre-cyclone. By overcoming these issues and getting people more involved with their local waterways, we can form a greater appreciation and connection, and greater support for projects or initiatives. Speaking of connections, we thought it would be really cool to take a moment to hear your guys' opinions and connect to this topic on a personal level. We'd like to invite a couple of you to share a favourite memory involving a water or special location related to water, somewhere that's special to you. Who would like to start?
Ooh, there's a word all put out there. Zan.
Well, it's kia ora, thank you for that invitation. It's fresh in my mind because it was just yesterday. So we have the luxury up at Marakakaho to have access to the Ngārora, and there's actually a little walking and cycle trail there. So I was able, with my wife, to get on the e-bikes, the mountain bikes, and take the dog for a run through those trails there. And a massive shout out to a couple whose names has escaped me for the moment, but there's a couple that pour their weekends and their souls into maintaining those tracks, and it's just amazing. But I completely agree with you. Access, whilst it's challenging because not everyone respects the access we provide, getting people more connected with these taonga is one of the secrets to solving our problems. Thank you.
Anyone else like to share?
Alex, kia ora, Alex.
Kia ora. Something I'd like to share is something I saw in our Central Hawke's Bay community a couple of months ago, where we have a spring festival in the town of Waipawa, and back in February the Waipawa River came through the stop banks and through that town of Waipawa, through people's homes and through people's businesses. But in the beginning of October at the Spring Festival, the community went and really deliberately reconnected back with the river. They went over the newly replaced stop banks into the river channel and had their annual rubber duck race, which sounds really simple, but it was really fabulous to see people who are really quite scared, actually, about what the impact of the river can have on them and how they deliberately went over onto that gravel into those channels and interacted, and it was a really great thing to see. So the connection to our waterways and to our water is so, so important, and we can be quite creative about how we do it.
Kia ora. Anyone else like to share?
Yeah, I'll have a go.
Kia ora, Paul.
I'd like to talk about where I come from, the Wairau River. When I was a child, it was a challenge to you to swim across the river. That was your challenge. You plan when you've done that. And you only got to walk around the cemetery and see how many people drown doing it. So it's quite a sad place to be. However, similar to what Alex just said, when Gabriel hit, the river jumped its banks, came through the showgrounds and flooded the other side of the town. I've got to sadly tell you that that's still happening. Just recently we had a rain event that flooded my little village of Kihitu, and there's nothing we can do about that. It's all to do with the river mouth and where it's placed. There's a lot of work to be done on there. So rather than use this opportunity to pour out my heart about that stuff, I just want to say that don't forget the Wairau River, because that's a very important waterway. Thank you very much.
Kia ora, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you to those who shared those memories. It's clear that water holds an important place in all of our hearts and resonates with the vision that we discussed earlier, the identity, respect, and connection we share with our waterways. Let these memories serve as a reminder of the shared value we place on the water. It's not just about policies and infrastructure. It's about preserving the moments that make our relationship with water so special and meaningful. So what can we actually do to improve community engagement and make our waterways sustainable and safe for everyone to enjoy? One way is advertisement encouraging interaction. Picture this, a vibrant ad campaign showing the beauty and stories of our rivers and lakes. By creating visually appealing advertisements on various platforms, we can inspire community members to actively engage in waterways. These ads convey their significance, creating interest and pride, and kindling a renewed connection and appreciation. Another is supporting schools to increase connection. In the words of Whina Cooper, "For how the children grow, so will be the shape of Aotearoa." By supporting schools and weaving water-related education into their curriculum, we lay a groundwork for generations deeply connected with our water sources and more likely to work towards improving them. Some next steps could be supporting schools to adopt a waterway close to them and helping look after it, or simply learning about the history of the awa that surround us. The possibilities in terms of education are endless. A final action we can take is to plan events around waterways. Getting local communities involved in riparian planting, cleanups, education workshops, or just general recreation activities provides opportunities for people to come together, creating a sense of belonging and shared responsibility. These events can strengthen the community's connection to waterways while promoting sustainable practices. Young people want to be involved, so it's easy to reach out to them to see what they want to hear. By implementing these actions, we can overcome the negative mindset, increase community engagement, and ensure the sustainability of Hawke's Bay's waterways. Let's transform our collective vision into tangible results, making our waterways not just a resource, but a cherished part of our identity and our community life.
So, what do we want? Firstly, we want a youth voice in council, a seat at the table. We also want our ideas to be heard and worked through and actioned. And lastly, we want youth perspective to be taken into account when making decisions. Why do we want this? To be a voice for young people and bring a youth perspective to ideas being put forward for our community.
Kia ora tātou. Te Tēnei te mihi mahana kia koutou. Thank you for your inspirational presentation and your tono, so your your challenge back to us. And we have spoken about it in workshops around the voices that need to be around this table. And so I think, you know, across the table here, we absolutely want to invite your voice so it's heard, and we need it for the future. So kia ora koutou. Is there any other feedback to give to these amazing wahine? Kia ora.
Kia ora, Whenua. We do actually have youth council sit on all our committees at Hastings District Council. We value your input. That's what it's good.
Kia ora, Michelle.
There's a well thought out presentation and I enjoyed it. I suppose my question is, where's Wairau in this? Because I see it's Napier and Hastings. Nothing against you, but we've got some really, strong rangatahi back home who we've got an environmental group back home. And we've brought them in under us to, and working with them. And they're quite knowledgeable. They're young, could be masters, they know what they're talking about. And if we're looking at the future, we've got to have them as part of our group. But I can remember when all the climate action protests were going on in the Rangatahi, my daughter and her friend, they were 10 years old, they bunked school to protest on the bridge. And they were the only ones there. So it's pretty hard when you're by yourself, eh? So those rangatahi are everywhere, and I'd like to see more inclusion, especially Hawke's Bay includes Wairau. Well done, ka pai, and I love your focus on the boy.
I can give you a little kōrero around Wairau. So we've just started conversations with Wairau College around the Enviro skills and getting in, because we'd love to be able to connect with Wairau College Rangatahi. Same with Central Hawke's Bay. We've got a couple of students that we connect with down there. So we certainly do try our hardest to connect with our wider reach as well. Yeah. Just to finish off, girls, do you want to share your whakatauki?
Yeah, so we would just like to finish our presentation with a whakatauki that resonates with us and why we want to be a voice for rangatahi and the climate action space in Hawke's Bay. And as my good friend Grace here said in her closing words at the Youth Climate Action Forum, young people are the future. We are the reason for protecting Papatūānuku. And as such, our perspective on how we preserve our world is potentially the most relevant one there is. So, Manaaki whenua, Manaaki tangata, haere whakamoa. Care for the land, care for the people, move forward. Thank you for having us here.
Girls, we just have Roz online, who I think she wanted to congratulate you. Oh, you're on mute. All the way from Wairau. No, you're still on mute.
Wow, is that better?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're with us.
Cool. Kia ora. Just wanted to say that was an excellent presentation. Really love your ideas, and that all of them we can adopt and take forward. I think we should be. I think they're great. We do have a youth council at Wairau District Council, and just wondering whether you would be happy to share your presentation that we could present to the youth council there.
Yeah. Ka pai, yep, there's nods. Thanks, Rose.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you.
Maybe Hinerangi can get in touch with you. Ka pai.
Wonderful,
And
thank
Robbie.
you.
Kia ora, Robbie.
Kia ora, just a quick one, and ngā mihi ki a koutou, ngā tamariki mā. Great presentation. The reason why you need to be at the table is because the future is actually yours, not ours. So make sure that's your first point right at the start. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. And yes.
I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity early next year for a similar presentation, if not the same, to go across the other TAs, Napier, Hastings, Central Hawke's Bay as well. That was such a powerful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kia ora.
And if I can just leave it with the Regional Council as they support this Youth Council to share them, please.
Absolutely. Would you like being chair? Come on. Absolutely. Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Well done. That brings us to a close for our meeting today and for the year koutou mai. So, just a big mihi.
Happy to move the recommendation.
And to move the recommendation, kia ora Tanya, and second, Michelle. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Kia ora koutou. Just warm greetings to you all for the holiday season approaching and staying safe with your whānau. Thank you for your incredibly hard mahi this year through challenging circumstances, but I am thrilled actually to the place that we've come to as a committee. We have clear vision and strategy. There are some actions that we need to work on in understanding relationships, but that doesn't come overnight. And we've looked at investment, and it's really important to take us into the actions for the rest of the term. So tēnā tātou katoa. If there are no other closing comments, Matua Roger, kia ora. Could you please close us?
Kia ora no tātou. Ki noi tātou. Ki te matua kaharawa e tukuna atu mātou. Tō mātou whakamoemere ka whetai ki a koe. Mao manaki tanga mai te timata tango tini huinga. Tainei ko tini haura. Ke tau ki a tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou ariki o Ukraiti. Me te aroha te atua. Me te whiwhi tahitanga ki te wairua tapu.
Ake, 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 amen. Kia ora tātou. Kia ora.